going to show you how I set up that tarp from yesterday. I went and actually got the rest of the wood we didn't use yesterday from the exact same tree. We're going to start the fire and show you how I did that yesterday with the wood I was using. So we're going to get everything up. All we've done so far is get our bag up off the ground and shed a layer or two. It was warm, it's cooling back off a little bit now, we're being still. So we're going to get the tarp set up and then we'll get a fire going. Alright, so we're getting our pack and get our shelter kit. I have everything I need for my shelter in one bag. This is the Pathfinder poncho tarp. I like it because it's my rain gear and my shelter all at the same time. The nice thing about this as opposed to military poncho, which I have, is the hood has a little Velcro envelope that it sticks into, so you don't have to worry about tying up your hood or the hood leaking if it starts raining. Or like today, we're supposed to get up into the 40s, so all the snow is going to melt today, and so everything's dripping, everything's going to be wet. That's what I really like about this one as compared to a regular military poncho like I have. The other thing is this is bigger, so that makes it, you get more coverage with it. Alright, so I actually ended up moving over slightly so that we can get the exact same setup we had yesterday. All I've done so far is put my ridge line around my tree. All I have is a loop that I went around the tree with and then ran the line through it. So we use the same trucker's hitch knot that we use for our hammock setup. I got some really good close-ups on how to do that if you want to go back and watch that video for reference. Today I'm just going to show you how we set this up yesterday, since I didn't have a lot of battery yesterday. These will probably both go up at the same time or within a couple hours of each other on YouTube. I'll put day 1 or day 2 or something like that so you can tell which ones are which. So there's our ridge lines. Get our tarp. Like I was saying earlier about this hammock, see if you can, or with this tarp, I mean, see if you can see it. This Velcro, make sure that's going down and that Velcro part's on the bottom, so that, especially with a day like today where the snow is melting and your water drips on it.
Not all of it. Dad, make sure the knees.
So on this, since we're going to have a little overhang, we're going to go our second tie out point. Add my toggles real quick.
Where are you going to put the water, Dad?
This is just 2 pieces of wood I picked up off the ground a while ago that are decent size and diameter, so they're not going to break. I'm going to use that extra line from my tie out point for my first loop. And all I'm going to do is come over here and put a second half inch in to secure that there. And when I put tension on the other side with my prusik knot, they're not going to go anywhere with my prusik loop. So those shouldn't go anywhere. Now we'll get our 2 stakes out. Like I was saying with my stakes, I carry plastic stakes, and on 2 of my stakes I keep line on them anyways, so that they're already ready to go, because generally when you're setting up a shelter, depending on which configuration you do with your tarp, you only need 2. So I keep, sorry for the noise in the background, our neighbors got the chainsaws out. So I just leave 2 lines on there, so all I have to do is sink them in the ground and put my loops in there. I'm going to use the exact same trucker's hitch knot that I used on the tarp for this to get it tension where I want it. So I don't have my tripod with me today, so I'm not going to show you all this part. Turn it off and then I'll come back to you. Alright, so once we get our stakes in, come over here. Remember we went to our second tie out point so we can have a little bit of an overhang. What I'm going to do is, all my lines are set up the same way. They should have a loop tied on the end so that you have something to run your line through on itself. That all dressed up. You can come to this little tree right here. Step off a little ways for it. We're going to put in my other loop. tighten that up. We'll go around and do the same thing on the other side. Alright, so all I did, I actually went and grabbed the rest of the firewood we had from yesterday. And all this is a piece of dead pine, dead standing. It was actually, I actually had to cut it off. And all I did yesterday was cut these down a little bit. Like this. I didn't get too crazy with them. I didn't do any curls or anything like that. I did do a little bit of feather sticking. And I'll show you what I did with that as far as that goes here in just a minute. And all I did was basically use the small stuff that was that breaks off as I was chopping this wood down some. Nothing fancy. With it being fat wood, and the whole big majority of this tree, and as tall as it was mostly fat wood. So I didn't even have to process it down a whole lot to begin with, just because there's so much resin in the majority of the tree. So let me get a little bit more of this process down, and then we'll get the fire started. Alright, so at this point all I've done is grabbed some random sticks that were up off the ground so they're not super wet, just to give me a little bit of a base to get off the ground. And then all I did was the real small stuff that came off where I split that wood down, put a little bit of feather stick on it, just get some curls on each little piece as I pile them up. And then I've got one piece right here. It's got a pretty good amount of resin in it. I'm gonna use that to light up the rest of it. So let's get a lighter out. Stuff's a little damp, it was sitting out all night. Stuff's a little wet, but I'm good to go. There we go. It's a really nice thing about using pine or fat wood. With all the resins in it, you see that darker smoke coming off. Even with it being wet, it only took maybe 10 seconds total between the two times I used the lighter to get that piece going, even with it being wet. And then just getting those other pieces cut down to where they're gonna have fat wood, have the resin exposed so that it gets going. I did let this get going a little bit longer than I would normally before I put more wood on it, just because it was a little damp. But that resin in there should do great for it. Alright y'all, so this is our fire. All I did was pour enough water in the center to make sure we reached all the way through the snow. No more steam, no more smoke coming out. So what I'm going to do now is take another piece of snow, cover up that hole, and this should be perfectly fine. I have no problems with it. On the way back, we'll walk by where we camped yesterday, and I'll show you the fire we had yesterday. It looks exactly like this still. So, alright y'all, this is our campsite from yesterday, and this is our fire from yesterday. So putting the snow on top like that, and then running water down the middle, and then covering it back up good. You know, it's not going to go anywhere. Along with all the other snow on the ground, it's not going to go anywhere, but just double check, make sure. So that's what it looks like the next day. It's pretty much exactly the same as it was the day before. Alright y'all, so we stopped at the creek on the way home. I don't know how well you can tell, but you see this vine right here. See how it's all long stringy pieces? It's wet right now, but if you get it up in the air, this was actually laying on the ground. I picked it up, put it up in the air. I grew up calling this strangler vine. I don't know what it's actually called. But this is great tinder material and bird nest material. With it being wet like this, you could probably put it in your pocket for a little while and it'd dry out enough that it would take an open flame for sure, maybe even a ferro rod. But I put it up here in the air so that I know where this resource is, I know where this vine is. I can come back to it later once the wind's picked up some and this is dried now, it's up off the snow. So just a little quick tip for you. All right, y'all, we're back at the house. That's pretty much it for today. Most of this snow is probably on tomorrow, so we might get out tomorrow before it finishes up, but it's not supposed to get above freezing tonight, so it'll probably all be gone by the end of the day. As always, there's always a storm coming. Keep your powder dry, your knife and your axe sharp, and eye on your back trail. Catch y'all next time.